Multiple illegal aliens have been arrested for multiple crimes against children, including of a 13-year-old girl in New York City and the murder of a 12-year-old girl in Texas. Democrat news editors are ignoring the crimes. Democrat bureaucrats are denying responsibility for the crimes. And Democrat pundits and politicians are laughing about the crimes.
Here's the three cable networks reporting of this. Was our banner said, soon Biden announces legal protections for undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. CNN's banner said, Biden announces new protections for some undocumented spouses. Here was Fox's banner, migrant arrested for raping 13-year-old in New York City.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of the problem, right?
Exactly.
Is that you have
That's
a lot
part
of
the problem.
fear-mongering.
Exactly.
Ha! Ha 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 ha! Yes! You heard that correctly. The reaction to that headline about that horrible crime being committed against that girl. Ha ha ha, yes. That's the problem. They're doing the real-life version of that Norm Macdonald joke about Bill Cosby. The joke is, everyone says the worst thing about Bill Cosby's crimes is the hypocrisy. Norm points out the worst part was actually the people whose job it is to enforce the law, punish criminals, report the news, and craft immigration policy are telling you that they don't care when foreign nationals are Americans. They actually think it's funny, apparently. They don't care when foreign nationals murder Americans. They certainly don't care when foreign nationals enter our country illegally. They encourage that. The only problem that arouses their ire and condemnation is the fact that some people don't like it and want it to stop. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. You know that girl who went viral for using the N-word on TikTok? Maybe you don't. Lucky you. She's gone totally viral, and she debuted as a new right-wing darling. Well, now there's an update to the story. She's repositioned herself as a centrist because the right-wingers don't like her very much. We'll get to that really, really important story in just a moment. First, though, get your candles at dailywire.com/shop before they are gone. You can go to thecandleclub.com, of course. That's with the in it, thecandleclub.com. You can get Sicilian Summer. That's my seasonal candle. It's delicious. You can also get some of my other favorite candles, the PSL candle, Wise Man, which is a riff on our best-selling candle for Lent, Smells and Bells, smells like a 12th century monastery. You can get the Crème de la Crème creamy candle. You can get the Old Soul candle. That one's really nice. You get my Mayflower line of candles. We've sold about a bazillion of these candles since mentioning them on the show. So get yours before they're gone. They're really great, especially the seasonal one right now because it's going to disappear soon. Sicilian Summer. You know, make your home smell like my imagination. I don't know what to tell you. Let's get back to, before we move on, this really, really awful story, because this really, really awful story just keeps getting worse. And it's actually multiple stories. It's illegal aliens who murdered a 12-year-old girl in Texas. It's illegal aliens who, 13-year-old girl in New York. It's many other stories pertaining to the crimes committed by illegal aliens. And the reason I say these stories get worse and worse is because we have an official policy from the White House of open borders. Of practically open borders, meaning, I guess technically we sort of have a border, but the policy is the illegal aliens come across, just let them come in if you can. If border enforcement decides they're actually going to talk to these people, just let them go. Once they arrest the illegal aliens, just let them go right into the country, fly them, drive them into the interior of the country, just bring them all in. Don't check, release them. They're never going to show up to their court date. Give them a path to citizenship. If the White House can figure out how to pull off that political play, let them in. And then they commit crimes and then they deny responsibility. Well, this is what happened in the case of a 12-year-old girl who was murdered in Texas, allegedly by illegal aliens. She's 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungare. The pair of illegal aliens who are accused of murdering her were known to law enforcement, were arrested by law enforcement, by Biden's Department of Homeland Security, and were released into the United States by Biden's DHS. So Had DHS done its job, this 12-year-old girl would be alive today. Her parents would not be in profound mourning, life-altering mourning today. This horrible crime would not have been committed. But DHS let the illegals go. And DHS let the illegals go because Joe Biden told them to. Because all the Democrats, up to and including the President of the United States, said you have to stop enforcing the law. You have to let these illegals go. And yeah, maybe some 12-year-olds are going to get murdered, but hey, that's the cost of changing the demographics of the country and giving us ourselves an electoral advantage. So if some 12-year-old girls need to be murdered, look, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. And this is going to be good for Democrats politically. So yeah, we got to murder some 12-year-olds, I guess. That's what they're saying. I'm not being even slightly hyperbolic. That's the calculus. And after this, even after this awful story, even after all the pushback, DHS is going to keep doing it. Biden's going to keep the same policy, and more 12-year-olds are going to get murdered. Not only is the political establishment going to continue to push these policies, the journalists who are supposed to speak truth to power, they're going to cover for them. This is how the AP covered this story. 2 men arrested in strangulation of 12-year-old Houston girl whose body was found in a creek. And the picture, you don't see it on the printable version, the picture on the website is just of a creek, which tells you immediately these were illegal aliens. At the very least, what this tells you is the perpetrators were not white guys. When white guys commit crimes, the picture is of white guys. And the first line in the article, at least within the first paragraph, white man committed some awful crime. When a non-white man commits a crime, the race doesn't appear. This is not my own observation. This is Ann Coulter's observation. She got in a lot of heat for calling it out some years ago, and it remains true. The longer you read news coverage that does not mention the race of the perpetrator, the more certain you can be that the perpetrator is not white. Especially a white man being the absolute boogeyman, villain of all villains in our modern intersectional identity politics world. Now, I'm going to add a coda to the Ann Coulter rule. You can call this the Knowles coda to the Ann Coulter rule, which is the longer that you read a crime story especially in a border state, and the news editors do not mention the citizenship status of the perpetrator, the more certain you can be that it's an illegal alien, which is exactly what happened here. You know that these are illegal aliens. Allegedly, again, they haven't been convicted yet, but that's certainly what the evidence would seem to point to. Now, is Biden's administration going to take any responsibility here? No. We know for certain that that's not going to happen because Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, went on CNN and said he bears no responsibility.
Jim, first and foremost, of course, our hearts break for the children, the family, the loved ones, the friends of the individual who was murdered, the woman, the mother. Jim, a criminal is responsible for the criminal act. The criminal who committed this heinous act should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, and forcefully so. That is my response.
That's his response. By the way, he's referring to another murder that illegal aliens committed, not the ones that we've been talking about today, another one, because these stories go on and on and on. And he says, how dare you suggest that I'm responsible, that the Biden administration is responsible, the criminal is responsible for his crimes. Sure. If your landlord removes your roof right before a thunderstorm takes place and you get struck by lightning, I guess the landlord could say, look, I didn't strike you with lightning. It was the lightning that struck you with lightning. Don't blame me. Yeah, I guess you didn't directly strike me with lightning, but you removed my roof, man. You're supposed to provide me with a roof, landlord, and you didn't do that. And you intentionally took away my roof. You are responsible when I get struck by lightning in a thunderstorm. That's exactly the position of Alejandro Mayorkas here, and ultimately Joe Biden. They have removed the border. The border exists to protect Americans from these evil criminals. That is one of the chief reasons that we have a border in the first place. You have removed the border, and you have impeded other law enforcement officials who want to enforce the border. You've impeded them from doing so. When the Texas political apparatus goes in and starts building up borders because the federal government won't do it, the federal government threatens to take down the borders. They're removing the roof in the thunderstorm. They are responsible. Alejandro Mayorkas is responsible, but ultimately it's not even him. Because if Alejandro Mayorkas decided tomorrow to do the right thing and do his job and enforce the law, he would be fired. And Biden would replace him with someone else. Ultimately, the buck stops with Biden. And a great deal of culpability for these murders and every one of these illegal alien crimes that's been committed over the last 3 years is the fault of Joe Biden. It's also the fault of the criminal, but it is in large part the fault of Joe Biden. He is making a very cynical calculus here. He thinks that the murders are worth it for the political advantage that illegal immigration, mass illegal immigration, will give to Democrats. Not good stuff. You know what is good stuff? Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com, use promo code Knowles. With Independence Day right around the corner, what better way to celebrate America's birthday than with 100% American meat? Goodranchers.com is the #1 place to get 100% American meat for this uniquely American holiday. Celebrate the sweet taste of freedom with savory meats conveniently delivered to your door, all born, raised, and made right here in the USA. Whether it's a backyard barbecue, a poolside party, or a beach bonfire, Good Ranchers has the best meat at prices that are unbelievable, with all sorts of great deals like the bacon and the this and the that. It's just, it's insane. And it's the greatest burger I've ever had, and you got to try it. Right now, you can save on Good Ranchers meat like never before. Subscribe to any Good Ranchers box now. Get $100 off plus free smoked brats for a year. Our listeners can get this special offer by going to goodranchers.com, promo code Knowles. This is more than a great deal. It's a chance to celebrate America by supporting American family farms and enjoying the highest quality American meat. All you have to do to claim this offer is go to goodranchers.com, subscribe to any of their custom curated boxes filled with 100% American beef, chicken, pork, or wild-caught seafood. Use promo code Knowles to claim your $100 off and free smoked brats for a year. That's goodranchers.com, promo code Knowles. Stuff sells itself. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered. Speaking of good and evil, I covered last week the new Star Wars show. I do not watch the new Star Wars show. I liked Star Wars when I was a kid, but I'm an adult now. My associate producer, Professor Jacob, is still a kid. I think he's 12 years old. And so he loves Star Wars. And he said, Mr. Knowles, you've got to hear about what they're doing to Star Wars. They're turning it super woke, super lib. He said, episode 1 of this show involves witches summoning demons to create children without fathers. It's a witchcraft, lesbian, IVF surrogate episode of Star Wars. I said, wow, that's really bad, man. That's real left wing. And then Professor Jacob, in a huff and a puff, he tells me, Michael, episode 2 somehow got worse. And it got worse in a different way, beyond the lesbian witches doing IVF and surrogacy in Star Wars. Episode 2, you saw a little bit more of the weird sex stuff. You saw the imposition of gender pronouns into the Star Wars universe.
What's that? That's Basil. Is he or they with us?
Is he or they? Or they? It's so clunky. It's so on the nose. Could you imagine? Had this occurred in the first Star Wars, first of all, no one would have any idea what they're talking about. But if any of them did know that this was about gender ideology, Chewbacca would have just scratched them across the face. Han Solo would have shot whoever said that just like he shot Greedo, okay? This would not be tolerated in the original Star Wars. But now it's super lib and PC and all the rest of it. Okay, that's bad enough. You get this radical gender ideology. But the worst part, as Professor Jacob explained to me, again, I don't follow this stuff, but as he explained it to me, is they are violating the inner logic of Star Wars. The second episode, and really this whole series, has been contradicting previously established aspects of the Star Wars universe blithely, because they don't even care. The new showrunners are so focused on leftist ideology They don't care if their ideology contradicts the entirety of the Star Wars story. So this is largely in the words of Professor Jacob. I was not going to take the time to watch this nonsense, but I forced him to. He would have done it anyway. And then he explained it to me. If you go back to the first prequel, Phantom Menace with Jar Jar Binks, that takes place in the Star Wars chronology 100 years after this new show, The Acolyte. And there is a scene in which the two protagonists, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, report what happened to the Jedi Council. And after hearing this report of these two fighting a Sith, with the red lightsaber, Darth Vader types, a Jedi by the name of Ki-Adi-Mundi, who has a giant head, he looks like Dan Aykroyd in Coneheads, says the following, quote, "Impossible, the Sith have been extinct for a millennium," and the Jedi all agree. The problem here is that there is a Sith in the Acolyte, which directly contradicts Episode 1, A Phantom Menace. Why is this a problem? One, because it messes up the timeline of whether the Sith existed or not. It takes away all of the dramatic stakes of Star Wars Episode 1. Also, according to the Star Wars chronology, this guy, Ki-Adi-Mundi, wasn't even born yet. So in Professor Jacobs' words, the whole thing is thrown askew. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, it makes the Jedi a liar or makes him demented, like Joe Biden. I guess there are some political resonances here that could be even more drawn out in Star Wars. But regardless, it's driven the fans crazy, including Professor Jacob. Now, when asked about this, the showrunner for the new Star Wars, The Acolyte, explains that she hired writers who weren't familiar with Star Wars. She said, "I just thought it would be good." This is a direct quote. "I just thought it would be good to have the perspective of a person that had literally never seen Star Wars until she was in the room." And she said to me, "Why do you want me in this room? I've never seen Star Wars. I have no idea. I think there's a dog in it, but I don't know anything." Ha ha ha. And I was like, this is the showrunner, Leslie Headland. I was like, first of all, you're an incredible writer, but that's why I want you here. I want you to be questioning narrative. I don't want myself, who's a lifelong fan, to be just relying on particular references to create emotional beats. I want those emotional beats to be earned and checked by someone that isn't super familiar with it. So she's trying to couch this by saying, look, we're hiring people who don't know anything about Star Wars, but look, I love Star Wars. Yeah, well, if you love Star Wars and you're such a big fan, how come you keep contradicting the whole story? You obviously don't know that much about Star Wars. My 12-year-old associate producer here on the Michael Knowles Show knows a lot more about Star Wars than the showrunner of the new Star Wars show, and certainly more than the writer who's admitting she doesn't know anything about Star Wars. She's never seen a single movie. Why is this a problem? Because I care about Star Wars? No. Because I care about the Disney company? No. This is a problem because it reflects something intrinsic to liberalism, which is the indeterminacy and skepticism that goes along with liberalism. Liberalism, the political philosophy, it just says nothing can ever be settled, man. Nothing. It's all kind of socially constructed. It's all just about what you want with your individual will. That's what liberalism comes down to. There's that old line from Robert Frost, which says a liberal is someone who can't take his own side, even in an argument. Okay, liberalism is so skeptical. We can never know anything for certain, We can never come to any conclusions and then enforce those conclusions. That would be authoritarian. No, man, it's just it's whatever we want it to be, man. Society, government, religion, even the human body, even biology, man, can be whatever we want it to be. I know that the founders of liberalism, people like John Locke, did not speak with that kind of hippie modern accent, but the modern liberal ideas come from liberal philosophy. You see the seeds of this kind of skepticism and relativism, subjectivism, even in that early liberal philosophy. And it leads to the idea that you could write at this point, what is it, 50th installment of a piece of intellectual property like Star Wars, or it's the original trilogy, then the prequel trilogy, then the after trilogy, then the Christmas special, then the cartoons, then the this, then the that, then the books, that you could somehow write the next episode in this beloved franchise without knowing anything about it. The liberal skepticism and indeterminacy excuses a lot of laziness and ignorance and incompetence. And you see that reflected all throughout society. That idea, we don't really need to learn anything. When you learn history in school, you don't need to learn dates and names and stuff. You just need to learn themes. We don't want to teach you what to think, only how to think. Except when you don't teach people what to think, they don't learn how to think either. The skepticism and indeterminacy is ridiculous. You're seeing this expressed now by the liberals who are furious, totally separate issue, over the Ten Commandments law that was just passed in Louisiana. Louisiana, which now says public schools need to have the Ten Commandments on the wall. Whoopi Goldberg expresses perfectly the liberal reaction to this by raging at the Ten Commandments in a public school.
You're telling me you're concerned about children learning things. One of the things that you don't seem to understand is I have the same respect for my child that I have for yours. I'm not asking you to believe what I believe. I'm not asking your kid to believe what I believe. Public school is public school. Yeah. It means everybody can go to public school. I don't understand why, if you want your child to have a religious education, send them to a religious school. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you. Get out of my pocket, get out of my body, and get out of my school.
Get out of my public school. The public school is for everyone, not for you. Wait, what? The public, you people, you trying to impose the Ten Commandments, you trying to indoctrinate my kids with crazy stuff like thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal, these crazy ideas. How dare you? This is a public school. Public school is for absolutely everyone, and that's why you need to get out. Well, it's a public school, Whoopi. It's not just for you. It's also for normal people. And it's also for conservatives. It's also for moderates. It's even for Christians. Even Christians are allowed to go to public school. Even people who believe the religion that formed America. Yeah, that's right. I'm not asking you to believe what I believe. Yes, you are. Obviously, you are. You believe that the Ten Commandments shouldn't be taught, and you believe that a public school teacher should not teach thou shalt not commit murder. You think that, for whatever reason, you think that's really awful and terrible. And you are demanding that everyone agree with you. Because for all the skepticism and the subjectivism and the relativism and the supposed freedom of liberalism, man, don't yuck my yum, everyone can do whatever you want to do. Liberalism is ultimately a totalitarian ideology that forces, that demands acquiescence to its absurd premises and increasingly absurd expressions. And if you don't acquiesce to that, they're going to kick you out of public school, and they're going to punish you at your job, and they're going to ostracize you from polite company. They're going to censor you on social media. Who knows? Maybe they'll throw you in prison. Now, I love having conversations about all these sorts of topics, even the questions and conversations that liberals don't want us to talk about, like my latest episode of Michael And. In my long-form interview series, Michael And, I sit down with Nick and Lex Rednick, who were a gay married couple. I say they were a gay married couple because, as they describe it, God transformed them into the couple they were supposed to be. So now they are a normal couple, a normal married couple, just with some extra steps. Check out the teaser. You identified as a man on hormones. You, Nick, identified as a homosexual. So you got
gay married. Yeah, because we truly didn't think that the way that we were living was wrong.
You came out as a lesbian, not as a...
At first, yes. My own mother looked me in the eye and said, if I would have known that you were going to be my child, I would have aborted you. I go over to my mom and she's pouring her glass of wine and I say it. I finally get it out of my mouth. And she says, that's why you're a freak. It was like my innocence was ripped away. All this confusion came in.
I feel for every teen boy that is struggling with all of these emotions and feelings and desires.
So I fell on my face and I just cried out to God and I said, make me sexually attracted to a man.
You both acknowledge the desire is real, so do you still have the desires? Watch this episode now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. Be sure to watch the uncensored versions. Sometimes you got to drop stuff from YouTube. Make sure you watch those uncensored versions on Spotify and ad-free on DailyWire Plus. Now, speaking of being born again, we can get to being born the first time. That brings us to preborn. Go to preborn.com/Knowles. This month marks 2 years since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Did you know that the number of abortions have increased since then? We hoped they would go down. They've increased. More than 1 million babies were killed by abortion in 2023, the highest number of abortions since 2012. Why is this? The reason is not because people went out and had more surgical abortions. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's because, unfortunately, the abortion pill is now more available than ever, accounting for up to 64% of all abortions. But Preborn continues to stand strong. Preborn is the largest pro-life organization in the country. They provide free ultrasounds to mothers with unplanned pregnancies to introduce them to the precious life growing inside them. When a mother meets her baby on ultrasound and hears his heartbeat, she is twice as likely to choose life. How can you help? Every day, Preborn rescues 200 lives. One ultrasound costs only $28 and could be the difference between life and death. Please join the fight by sponsoring an ultrasound. Whatever gift you give will go towards saving lives. All gifts are tax deductible. I personally support this organization. I strongly encourage you to give whatever you can. Preborn.com/Knowles to donate today. Preborn.com/Knowles or dial pound 250. Say the keyword baby. That is pound 250, keyword baby. Whoopi Goldberg and the libs furious that public schools in Louisiana have to teach people, thou shalt not commit murder. Don't worship idols. Don't commit adultery. They're furious about that. President Trump says it's a great idea. On Truth Social, in all caps, very Trumpian mode of writing, he writes, I love the 10 Commandments in public schools, private schools, and many other places for that matter. Read it. How can we as a nation go wrong? This may be, in fact, the first major step in the revival of religion, which is desperately needed in our country. Bring back the 10 Commandments. MAGA 2024. Perfect. Simple as. And the key to his analysis here and his defense of the 10 Commandments is, how can we as a nation go wrong? Read the 10 Commandments. If we follow the 10 Commandments, how can we go wrong? He's not giving some nerdy explanation of the separation of church and state or the First Amendment, or even the nerdy right-wing version of it. I'll take full responsibility. I wrote the nerdy right-wing version of it. It's called Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds. Thank you. Why we ought to encourage things like the 10 Commandments in the public square. And I give all sorts of long historical and legal reasons and philosophical reasons as to why that's the case. But that's for a book. That's for a discussion on a commentary show. That's not for a campaign trail. For the campaign trail, you got to cut to the chase real quick. And Trump's excellent at that. And he cuts to the chase perfectly here when he says, hey, you got a problem with the 10 Commandments? Read the 10 Commandments. Is any of that stuff bad? Seems all good to me. If we follow the 10 Commandments, that'd probably be good for America. Let's do it. Let's have more 10 Commandments. Show me the lie. Show me the lie. You can't. So Trump on the right side of this, I think in terms of what's going to play in Peoria, probably the Trump view is more persuasive than the Whoopi view, than the liberal view. There are going to be a lot of people who, whenever they hear anything pertaining to religion, they just recoil because they are enthralled to demons. And so they just kind of reflexively recoil. But those people are never going to vote for Trump anyway. There's not a chance those people are going to vote for Trump. People who are going to vote for Trump are conservative Republicans and normal people who aren't all that partisan, but who have normal inclinations and they want a normal country with our normal way of life. And those people are going to be more on the side of the 10 Commandments than on the side of the people who want to banish the 10 Commandments from public life. So the libs campaign against Trump is not going very, very well. So they've just got to play the hits. They've got to go back to their old strategies. Clearest example of this is the new Hitler documentary on Netflix. It's a day that ends in Y, so we need to have a new Hitler documentary, especially when it comes to an election year, because the libs have to convince voters that Donald Trump is Hitler 2.0, mega super duper Hitler. He's back. Revenge of the Hitler. Here is just a short clip from this documentary.
It's sort of like Hitler's Mar-a-Lago, if you will. A kind of retreat in the Bavarian Alps that has a closeness to nature, the spectacular mountain panorama that gave Hitler the sense that he was on top of the world without having to deal with the messiness of everyday politics.
They're talking here about Hitler's vacation home. You've probably seen photos or videos of this over the years. It sometimes crops up in all the other Hitler documentaries. And the way they describe it is, it's just like Hitler's Mar-a-Lago. What, you mean it's a retreat home? Why wouldn't you say it's like Hitler's Camp David? That's a far better established analogy. The president has a retreat home that he goes to on the weekends and sometimes for a little vacation. But no, it can't be like Camp David because Biden goes to Camp David because Camp David is the official retreat for the president. And Biden's not Hitler. No, Trump is Hitler. So it's got to be Hitler's Mar-a-Lago. It's so transparent what they're doing. They've been doing it for years, so I don't think this really moves the needle at all. If you're going to be convinced that Donald Trump, an amiable and popular businessman from New York, real estate mogul who became a popular network TV host, who then became president on his first real try for the job because he's popular and normal, if you're going to be convinced that he's really the Führer, he's a Nazi or something, you were already convinced of that 6 or 8 years ago. So I don't think this documentary moves the needle at all. Why do they have to keep centering it around Hitler? Because I think this was an observation I gleaned from Nick Land, the writer. So I don't think it's original, but I've been thinking about it so much. I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but in old religion, in old civilization, you have the incarnation of ultimate good in Christ. And then you have evil that's still in the world because of the fall. And evil is the privation of the good. And the good has an absolute instantiation in the second person of the Trinity, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's how we previously understood good and evil. In liberal modernity, which flips everything on its head, you've got the opposite. There is no good, there's no incarnation, there's, according to the modern liberals, none of that's real. But there is the incarnation of absolute evil. And the incarnation of absolute evil is in the person of Adolf Hitler. He is... No matter how nasty and evil he was in real life, in the mythos, he actually takes on a superhuman kind of quality, which is he is perfect evil. And in the liberal view of things, there is no such thing as absolute good. They'll deny the good, the true, and the beautiful quite frequently. But there is this incarnation of absolute evil, and then there's just the privation of evil all around that. So there's nothing worse that you can compare someone to than Hitler. And the fact that they've been doing this to Trump, so even though it doesn't really work and they've been trying for so long, and this is like January 6th, it's the beer hall putsch or something. I don't know. They always talk about, this is the night of the long knives, or this. It's all these comparisons to Hitler. Now, Mar-a-Lago is like the Alpine retreat. It shows you that the liberal ideology is just really tired. And then, okay, once you reach the furthest extreme, you compare someone to Hitler, then what do you do? If that doesn't work, what can you do? Well, the only thing they can do is, try to rig the voting rules or throw the guy in jail. That's about all that's left, because you're not really persuading anyone anymore. Now, speaking of libs who call people Nazis, do you remember New York Congressman Jamaal Bowman? Jamaal Bowman is this huge lib, complete lunatic from New York. He and I had a slight altercation because after I spoke at CPAC a couple years ago and said that men and women are different, he said, quote, "Michael Knowles is a Nazi hell-bent on keeping only white men alive and in power. We cannot allow him and others to push their evil agenda, and we must stand up for rights." CPAC has made one thing clear this year: they support a future run by Nazis like Knowles. Just to remind you, at CPAC I said, for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who've fallen prey to this confusion, must be eradicated from public life entirely, the whole preposterous ideology at every level. So I said, boys and girls are different. This is ideology. It's terrible for everyone. It's especially terrible for the people who indulge in it and think that they're the opposite sex. And so we got to get rid of the ideology. And he said, because of that, Knowles is a Nazi hell-bent on keeping only white men in power. He's a complete lunatic, this guy. That was my first interaction with him. He then came even more to the public consciousness last October when he pulled a fire alarm to interrupt an official congressional proceeding. So the actual crime that was committed on January 6th, the worst day in the history of this or any republic, is the interruption of an official congressional proceeding by these rioters who actually were just being escorted around by Capitol Police in some cases, like the Horn Hat guy. And anyway, that was the crime. Jamaal Bowman did that. So after talking about how this is the worst insurrection, it was a coup d'etat, we almost lost the country, Jamaal Bowman did the exact thing that they accused the January 6th people of doing. Well, now we got another hit from Mr. Bowman. This is Jamaal Bowman speaking at a political rally in New York.
We're going to show them who we are.
This is such third world behavior. And actually, that's not fair. That's offensive to people who live in the third world. There are plenty of good, pious, responsible, normal people who live in the third world. The reason that I call this third world behavior is because one of the distinctive features about the third world is that the political order in third world countries is broken. It's often corrupt. It's weak. It doesn't, because of the factors that make the third world, the political order has all sorts of problems and pathologies, regardless of the people who make up the constituency. And that's what we're seeing here. This kind of stuff, you expect this kind of talk out of a tin pot dictatorship, out of a banana republic. This is not the sort of thing befitting the United States of America. You think about our founding fathers who wrote beautiful epistles. Frankly, whether you agree with their political positions or not, these are beautiful, educated epistles drawing from the deep wells of political philosophy. You think of the Federalist, written by Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and James Madison, defending the Constitution, this rather complex, very serious document. And the successor to those people is, we go show them who the F we are. Yeah, it's just so embarrassing. It's just so terribly, terribly embarrassing. I'm not saying we need to play by the Marquess of Queensberry rules or anything like that. I think in some ways, the polite political order needs to be shaken up every now and again because their facade of politeness covers up a reality of corruption and degradation. But talk like an adult who has any self-respect at all. This is just so embarrassing. And it matters because words are symbols, and so they represent underlying realities. Our politicians are symbols. They're representatives. They represent us in a representative republic. And if our representatives are just complete babbling degenerates like this guy, that speaks very poorly of the society that he represents. Very, very not a healthy country that is represented by people like Mr. Jamaal Bowman. Now, if you've not heard, Jeremy Boring, God King here at the Daily Wire, held a live town hall last week where he announced an exciting partnership with Angel Studios to bring you a new film called Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, coming to theaters this July 4th. You might know Angel Studios from their movie Sound of Freedom, which made a big splash last year by exposing the extent of the child trafficking crisis. Now, Angel Studios is back, continuing their fight for kids, and DW is joining. Sound of Hope is the true story of 22 families from a rural church who adopted 77 kids from the foster care system, creating a movement to save vulnerable children everywhere. We have a trailer for you so you can get a feel for what this movie's all about. Take a look.
Are you sure these people want us?
I know they do.
You can call me Mama.
Oh, Lord.
If we can't wrap our arms around the most vulnerable, then what do we have? Noise! And the children can't take the noise anymore.
This is something that we must do.
22 families want to adopt. Whole town wants kids now.
That's about right.
What's happening with Possum Trot could mean a huge change for the system.
I watched the film. It's incredibly moving, placing strong family values at its core. Right now, there are over 100,000 children in foster care that need homes and they need help. Best way to raise awareness is by seeing Sound of Hope in theaters. Sound of Hope is coming to theaters July 4th, and tickets are on sale now. You can get yours at angel.com/Michael, Michael. Go get them now before they're gone. My favorite comment on Friday is from J.S. McDuff, who says, "Marriage is just a piece of paper," says the guy who goes to work every day for a piece of paper. Yeah, that's a good point. Whenever you hear this, you sometimes hear it with marriage, though. Marriage is just a piece of paper. No, your marriage license is a piece of paper. Your marriage certificate is a piece of paper, and the certificate certifies that you have done something. It's a symbol. Your diploma from high school or college is just a piece of paper, but it represents the fact that you have completed your studies in high school or college. Human beings need symbols and representations in order to communicate. My words are symbols right now. We have visual symbols. Because we're intellect and we're soul and flesh. We need sense perception. So we need, you need to see things and touch things and smell things. And yeah, it's true. We need symbols, but we need the symbols to represent something. Otherwise, the whole world becomes unintelligible and we become a bunch of babbling baboons, which increasingly is what society seems like. Now, speaking of babbling and people with foul mouths, actually, you remember this girl? Maybe you don't. You're lucky if you don't. There's this girl who went viral on TikTok for saying the N-word. And she went viral for that and people were attacking her for it. But really, I thought what was especially disreputable about the video was all the other naughty words that she said. In the video, she wasn't using the N-word, the word that we now treat with the same taboo that the ancient Israelites treated the holy name of God. Because she used the N-word in a way that didn't refer to black people. It certainly wasn't insulting to black people. It was referring just to men generally. Like it's used in rap songs. A synonym for her use of the N-word would have been the word fella or buddy or something, So it wasn't, but then she used all these other naughty words that were in themselves quite vulgar and not the sort of thing that a woman should say, certainly not publicly. So she was attacked for this. Then she came out, she made a few other videos that also went viral on TikTok saying, F this, you're full of, which is the English word for it, and you're this and you're that, and all these really nasty, naughty words, talking like a sailor at a late night bar. So she got attacked not only by the left, but also by the right. And not only by the right, but also by the far right. So the extreme, even the fringiest of the fringe kind of right-wingers that she wanted to ally herself with, they attacked her also. And so now she's a woman without a home. She debuted as the right-wing darling, the new right-wing darling du jour, who's going to go viral and get a lot of followers and make a lot of money, mouthing off on the internet. Well, now she's repositioned just about 5 or 6 days after her debut as a centrist.
All right, y'all. So me and you, we're the normies. We are the normal people. We're the ones who built this damn country. And we have these fringes on the far right, and we have the fringes on the far left, that they all have their little clubs, they all have their little cliques, they all have their little catchphrases, and they both hate me. They both hate me because I represent you. Because we're normal. Because I don't want to join your club. Because we don't want to be a part of that. We're just normal people who work and pay taxes and get on. The government on us, the far right and the far left on us, and ultimately no one gives a about fixing this country because they're so busy. It's a circle jerk. They're so busy trying to, appease their own and stay in the good graces of their own and get famous and whatever, that they don't care about America. That's why nothing gets done in this country. Because they're so busy, fighting amongst themselves, like the little that they are, that they don't care to do actually anything about changing the country.
Okay, so the left and the right, as she says, agree that as a commentator, this girl is extremely annoying. However, I find her delightful, and I don't even know if she is being intentionally delightful. What I find delightful about her is not anything she has to say as a political commentator, but I find her delightful as a performance artist. What she is doing is a perfect satire of the political media landscape. And she probably doesn't know that. I think she's being sincere, and she actually does want to become the next, right-wing star mouthing off or whatever. And she's not failing at that. But what she's doing is a perfect takedown of so much idiocy and glibness in political media. She comes out of nowhere, and she's a pretty good-looking girl. And she just goes on, and she is offensive. And then she goes viral. What's funny about that is actually how you go viral, especially as a right-wing new media celebrity. As a left-wing new media celebrity to some degree too, but especially on the right. Because the left has the establishment media, so the right has to focus on things like social media and TikTok and they kind of slip in through the back door. So she does that, and it works. And that in itself is a kind of funny critique of right-wing media. Then she tries to position herself to gain a broader audience, not as a left-winger or a right-winger, but as a centrist, I'm just speaking for you. She says, I represent you. You don't represent anybody. No one even knows your name. You've gone viral twice. I've done 2 segments on her at this point, but I don't even know her name. And that's what makes it so fun. She goes, I represent you. You're not a member of Congress. You don't have a large audience. You don't lead a political movement. But what's so funny is there are many, many people in the political media who say, I speak for you. I speak for you, the downtrodden person. And they have no credibility, no authority to make that claim, but they do it anyway. And so that's a really funny satire of political media. And then the best part is she says, nothing gets done in this country. Nothing gets done. We got to get stuff done. But she never says what she wants to get done. And by disavowing the political left and the political right, she is divorcing herself from any kind of political ideology or philosophy or political agenda. She is saying, none of the things that they want to get done, I don't really want to get those things done. But I want to get stuff done. What is that stuff? I don't know. I just want to get it. And this reminds me, speaking of parodies of politicians, there's this politician in New York for a while. I won't say his name. I no reason to embarrass him individually, but he had this billboard on one of the main roads in his district, and it said, politician so-and-so, getting it done. Getting it done. And there's a picture of him with his dog. And it didn't list any policies, no particular accomplishments. Just getting it done. We got to get stuff done, and that's what the really shallow political media figures do. They don't have any particular philosophy or policy agenda or even candidates necessarily that they're supporting. They just want to get it done. We just got to fix stuff in this country. We're not fixing enough, And so anyway, all of that to say, I know everyone. This girl has unified the political spectrum in America because everyone who's encountered her videos on social media has attacked her from the far left to the far right to everyone in the middle. But I want to defend her because as a performance artist, she is presenting a brilliant and incisive critique of American political media. Now, speaking of centrism, speaking of real centrism and people who have actual policy prescriptions and campaigns and stuff, President Trump just went on the All In podcast. You know that President Trump has made immigration a big part of his campaign and restricting immigration and building the wall and deporting illegal aliens. Well, he was asked, he said, Mr. President, we in the business community, we want more migration. But only certain kinds of high-skilled migration, highly educated migration. So, Mr. President, while you're restricting immigration for the illegal aliens and all the rest, would you, even you, the biggest immigration hawk we've had at the national level in a long time, would you increase the kind of immigration that we want? And President Trump says yes.
Please promise us you will give us more ability to import the best and brightest around the world to America.
I do promise, but I happen to agree. That's why I promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't promise. Let me just tell you that it's so sad when we lose people from Harvard, MIT, from the greatest schools, and lesser schools that are phenomenal schools also. And what I wanted to do, and I would have done this, but then we had to solve the COVID problem because that came in and, sort of dominated for a little while, as you perhaps know. But what I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card to be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges too. Anybody graduates from a college.
Okay. He goes on. And President Trump here, he presents it beautifully. He says, look, I promise, but I don't promise because you're making me promise. I promise because I agree with this. And this is my view. If you graduate from an American college, you should have a green card stapled to your diploma. That is an immigration expansionist position. And President Trump has articulated that before. He says, I want more migration than ever, just not illegal immigration. I think a lot of the GOP base goes much further on immigration than President Trump would here. I think most people want to restrict all migration because we just have too much of it. I mean, the movement of people into this country over the last 60, 70 years is the largest movement of people ever in recorded history. We've now got millions and millions of foreigners coming in every year. And it's no knock on the immigrants themselves, but it just creates a lot of social problems. It is bad for social cohesion, especially when you've got a culture that won't try to assimilate the immigrants to the traditional American culture. It just creates a lot of problems. You can't have it. So what are conservatives to make of what President Trump says here? Seems to me, politics is the art of the possible. This is the position that one can hold on immigration. In polite society in 2024. Maybe it won't be the position in 2026 or 2028 or 2030, but that is the position now. And it's the only way, probably, to simultaneously try to restrict other kinds of immigration that pose more problems. There are reasons to restrict even the highly skilled, highly educated immigration, because America is not just an economy. America is not just a spreadsheet with GDP. There are social factors. There are community factors. But President Trump's view here is the moderate one. And I guess that's my big takeaway from this. While the libs are calling Trump Hitler and they're making movies about how he's Hitler and whatever, all the rest of it, even on a central issue for him, immigration, what's considered to be his most extreme issue, he is the moderate here. He is articulating the view that was held by even Democrats 20, 30 years ago. He is the moderate. Joe Biden is the one who says, well, illegals are going and kill some American girls. Well, that's just too bad. That's the price we pay for an electoral advantage. Open up the borders. President Trump saying, I want more good migration. I want less bad migration. That is, even if you don't agree with Trump's position, that is, without question, the moderate position. The rest of the show continues. Now, it's Music Monday. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.